Really powerful show of unity and solidarity, and it was peaceful, and yes, thank God. Thank God for that. Thank God for that. And uneventful, peaceful, and good. So
there was a small counter demonstration outside the fence on the left-hand side, but
yeah. I didn't even notice it. Yeah.
They were just made a little noise. But
and then Naftali Bennett, Prime Minister Bennett here yesterday. It was also really something.
So can you say something? What did he say? Did he bring us any good information or not?
It was interesting. He had a lot of good context to bring, just with his experience and his understanding of what sort of led up to this situation. He was saying that it was mostly the internal divisiveness, showing that we were vulnerable to attack.
Oh.
Yeah,
talking about
this was Bennett.
Oh, that's nice.
Spatula in English.
I don't know. What
was that? That's slang for they messed up.
Yes. Yes. And he said that as much. He said as much. Yeah, he said shame on us. It was on us, but he also pointed to, not pointing a finger at, but explaining contextually that.
But in a way, it's horrible to say this, but not PC and whatnot.
But go ahead.
But by messing up, we taught the world, don't think that you know everything and that you can do everything perfectly.
Yeah.
We will all be much more aware of things.
Sure.
As a result, we thought, between America and Israel, we can stop anything.
Yeah.
The other thing I think that was the side of, as a result of this, the only good thing that came out is that everybody got together.
Right.
In spite of the government, without the government, everybody was volunteering.
Right.
There was no right, no left. Everybody was together.
Right. Absolutely. And a unity government.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, that was something. I think Yossi Klein Halevi was saying that, like, October 6th, we were at each other's throats. Literally, October 6th. And October 8th, we're all unified. And right. We have to. And so
say about Jews, since we do have so many different opinions.
Yes. Right.
So we don't ever get the. Well, we have these Jews who are, for ceasefire and whatnot.
They were on the other side of the fence.
Yeah, they said.
Yeah.
Israel.
Yeah, we're all over the map.
Some people.
The guy who's the head of Hamas.
You saw what the Hazers said it was.
So he
On the other side of the
the Israelis, he was saying how he's changed from terror to be a peaceful. And all kinds of really excellent article on CNN.
Are you saying his son of Hamas?
No, Simhai.
No.
He's 60 years old.
No, that's not the son.
Who are we talking about?
That's one of the leaders of Hamas.
Yeah.
Was fooling the Israeli officials that they changed, that they want peace and stuff like this. Why they were this went into
Got it.
4 years.
Got it. Yeah.
That was
You're right. Right.
And he was saying all kinds of stuff about peace.
Yeah.
But he
got it. Understood. Yeah. But no, it's a lot to process. I want to invite that it's been a full week, maybe absolutely exhausted, but a powerful week, and really proud of B'nai Yeshurun, really proud of Cleveland. You couldn't look in any direction and not see a Cleveland sign up it was really something. And so I think we have a lot to be proud of. I think we're really doing a lot. So I do just want to take a moment to appreciate this community and let everything that we've been experiencing this week sort of soak in and absorb.
Now you know what we're capable of.
Yeah. Yes, that's right.
As a lot of meeting.
Right. Exactly.
I could do it, anybody could do it.
Right, just amazing. So today's topic is truth. one thing that struck me, Ben Naftali Bennett said, he is a right winger, and he formed a government that was the most diverse in Israel's history and contained left wingers and an Arab party, right, the Arab list. And one thing he said that struck me yesterday was, I have people who at first, I would have said, before we worked together in the government, I would have said, they don't love Israel the way I do. They're traitor XYZ. And after working with him, he said, no, we have very strong disagreements on issues, but I no longer question that they love Israel as much as I do. And he said, I wanted them around. That was the thing. It wasn't just like he said, it is.
You have to keep your enemies closer.
Right. But not even just that. But not even just that. Not even from just like a security standpoint, but from a refining each other's ideas perspective. That when you have people that are just yes men or yes women, right? You don't actually refine your own beliefs. But when you have people who think differently and you sharpen and refine each other, the result can be something really profound.
Yeah, you don't know what's wrong with your idea.
Sure.
The opposition and
They're challenged.
Right. And so that's sort of what I want to get at today is truth. And is there a objective truth, right? Is there a moment where, one side of the political spectrum is right and the other wrong, or one perspective is certainly correct if we just reason well enough, we'll get to the right answer? Or is truth a little bit more complicated, where maybe there are not really objective truth, but multiple truths, and maybe there is a right way forward at any given moment, and you have to make a decision, but that doesn't mean that there is only one truth. So it's a question, and it's a tough question. I don't think it's an easy answer, so I want to explore it today. One of my favorite midrashim, I spoke about it at one point, but we never actually studied it, and certainly not in this class, and it is a very powerful midrash from Bereshit Rabbah. So let's dive in. This is taking us back to before the creation of humanity. Welcome. Good to see you all. We're only just getting started, so it's all good. You haven't missed a thing. When God sets out to create humanity, the angels form two groups. One protesting God, saying, don't create humanity. Hila's laughing, finding that amusing. And the other group saying, no, create humanity. So let's dive in. Anybody want to read it in the English?
otherwise we wouldn't have anything to read if they hadn't.
That's right, yes, right. Anybody want to read English?
Let them read. They're not eating.
Okay, anybody on Zoom?
I'll read. Where is it?
Oh, okay, great. Oh, actually, I think Bob rose his hand, so we'll go with Bob, but you'll take the next one if that's okay. Okay, Bob, you want to read in English?
Unmute.
There it is.
Great.
Rabbi Simon said, when the Holy Blessed One came to create Adam, the first human, the ministering angels divided into various factions and groups. Some of them were saying, let him not be created, and some of them were saying, let him be created. That is what is written. Kindness and truth met. Righteousness and peace touched. Kindness said, let him be created as he performs acts of kindness. Truth said, let him not be created as he is full of lies. Righteousness said, let him be created as he performs acts of righteousness. Peace said, let him not be created as he is full of discord. What did the Holy Blessed One do? God took truth and cast it down to earth. That is what is written. You cast truth earthward. The ministering angels said before the Holy Blessed One, Master of the universe, why are you demeaning your very seal? Let truth ascend from the earth. That is what is written. Truth will spring from the earth. The rabbis say in the name of Rabbi Hanina bar Idi and Rabbi Pinchas and Rabbi Hikiah,
Yeah.
said in the name of Rabbi Simon, meod. This refers to man, Adam. That is what is written. God saw everything that God had made, and behold, it was very meod, good. Man, Adam, was good.
Okay, I'll just pause for a second. There's a midrashic move here that we may be familiar with at this point. Obviously, we may know that when God created all the, in all the different days, it was good. But when God created humanity, we get Tov Me'od, Hine Tov, it was very good. So we already kind of have that as evidence that humanity is good in this larger discussion about whether it was better or worse for God to create humanity. But there's a midrashic move between the word Me'od and Adam. What is it?
It's same letters.
Same letters, just switch them around. Right, so Me'od, Mem, Aleph, Daled, Adam, Aleph, Daled, Mem. So that's more midrashic proof that humanity is good. Same letters. Okay, finish us off.
Rav Huna, the rabbi of Tzipori, said, while the ministering angels were busy deliberating with one another and engaging with one another, the Holy Blessed One created him. God said to them, why are you deliberating? Humanity has already been created.
So something that I think is so beautiful about this midrash is it takes the verse from Psalms, kindness and truth met, righteousness and peace touched. And as midrash tends to do, it can take something and then completely imagine something that's nowhere near the original intention of that line. And from that we get, what if these traits are sort of, at least the way I read it, symbolized by angels. So there's the angel who's representing kindness. There's the angel representing truth. There's the angel representing, what are the other ones? Kindness, truth, righteousness, and peace. And you imagine them as sort of leading these different factions of angels that are either promoting or protesting the creation of humanity. And what is so striking about the story? What is
While they were discussing and disputing, God created.
Yeah, I love that. I love that, right? God sees the opportunity. It's one of those things where it's like, maybe why does God consult the angels? God's God. Maybe God wants to be collaborative and is showing us, trying to model for us the value of collaboration. I've always liked that. And it goes back to the whole, what Bennett said about a collaborative government, where it's not just, unilateral dictatorship of making your own decision from on high, but more valuing what comes from collaborative discussion. But what another really striking thing, what does God do before that? Oh, I see some hands. Nelson, and then Bob. Nelson.
Well, this midrash starts maybe mid context, because God doesn't consult the angels. They just start grumbling about it.
That's true. That's true. Yes.
The other part is that in the Jewish view, angels don't have any free will to grumble. That's in that sense.
No, they were created to grumble.
Yeah, it's interesting because we say that what separates humanity from angels is free will, right? God didn't want a chorus of beings praising God all the time and God wants people to choose actively, right? But at the same time, we have plenty of literature that depicts angels as sort of having agency in a way, right? Like there's also the midrash about the angels cheering on the Egyptians drowning in the sea, and God rebukes them. So they're not always just like correct and aligned with God's will. David, yeah.
Just for the sake of context, this is the imaginings of rabbis. So the genius of it in some senses, if we repeat the story often enough, it seems like it was written in the Torah.
Mm-hmm, right.
So either literally written by God or literally or figuratively inspired by God, however you want to look at it. And I'm not going to say that a midrash isn't, who am I to say that it isn't inspired by God either? I'm only saying that the context is these angels are imagined by these rabbis. They didn't actually see this happen.
Right.
So maybe the more interesting question is, why are they imagining these angels in this way?
Yeah.
In whatever context they're in.
Right.
So I'm not sure what their context is, these particular rabbis, but that's the question I'm asking.
Maybe they're preparing us for a discussion or a challenge. In other words, that we are not robots. We're not artificial, well, we're not artificial intelligence.
Right.
We are thinking people. We can disagree. We
Yeah.
can fight. But it also makes us think. When you're fighting something, then you have to think.
Right. Again, refining your beliefs.
I would also offer that maybe part of the context, although we have this in our tradition also, whether we got it from them or we already had it, I don't really know, but this lies against this idea that you need Jesus to make up for original sin, because the Tov Ma'od, at least in this Midrash, is not the totality of creation so far as it had gone by the end of the sixth day, but it's Adam.
Yeah. Right. So maybe it's an eternal appraisal of humanity, that people are good by nature.
Or at least not damned to start with, so to speak.
Yeah, understood. Bob, and then I want to return to something. Bob?
Which day of creation were angels created?
It's a great question. I think so.
Where'd they come from? I mean, who started this concept?
Yeah.
Good question.
It is a good question. I don't actually have an answer to it. I mean, there is Midrashic belief that God created the world with Torah, because it says with Chokhmah, like God created the world with wisdom. And they say, well, what is wisdom? Torah. So Torah was God's blueprint. So there's a school of thought that Torah preceded creation, but I don't know of anything about angels preceding creation, especially if you think of angels as being what happens to us after we die. So that would be, yeah, but go ahead, Ron.
I'll throw this silly idea out.
Yeah.
Since we, what's the word, amorphize God?
Anthropomorphism.
Yeah, that guy, that word.
Right.
The angels are his conscience.
Ah, interesting. Oh, I like that read. That's a very interesting
At least in this concept.
Right. So maybe it's different aspects of if you had to personify what's going on in God's head, which again is anthropomorphization. But
of course, we go back to the Torah when anybody who's apparently an angel first appears, the idea is messenger.
Right.
A messenger with a task.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
No, but along the same lines, I've always wondered, are there a dozen angels? 1,000 angels, 1,000,000 angels?
Maybe we got to do a session on angelology. It's a really interesting. There's a whole field. Yeah, there's a whole field. Was there a hand over here before we continue? Okay, but God, I want to go back because, and Nelson, I see your hand. Go ahead. Last comment, but then I want to continue. Nelson.
Well, when I was teaching, sometimes I would get students would say, human beings are evil. They do all these terrible things. And the answer, yeah, they do, but they're also capable of doing great wonder, great kindness, great peace. Yeah. And you have to remember, in that sense, we're two-faced.
Right.
And that we're not all one side. And that's part of what's being brought out here.
Absolutely. I think any honest thinker needs to account for the problem or the question of evil. You have to. But I think you also have to account for the question of good. Right? You can't just get lost in one or the other, though it can be easy to at times. But I want to go back to what God does that's pretty stark here. God takes one of the angels and casts it to the ground. Which one? Truth. Right? God takes truth and casts it to the ground.
And when he did,
humanity.
the letters got mixed up and came out Adam.
For Emmett? Not quite. Close enough. But there is some good Emet Midrash with the letters because
I messed up. That's Mo, not Emmett.
But
I find myself going to a neighboring country and looking like Diogenes.
Diogenes?
who walked
Greek.
around with a lantern
Uh-huh.
in the daylight looking for an honest man.
Yes, nice. Yeah,
We're in that situation too.
absolutely. Very relatable. Diogenes. But God cast truth to the ground, which I can understand two ways when I read this. One is disregarding, saying, I mean, how many times have you had an argument where you say, ultimately, to resolve this, you just have to part with what you believe is the truth in order to make peace, right? So there's that aspect of this, I think, where God is saying, you know what, truth, I understand you can quote all these things about why making humanity is going to be a mistake, but at the end of the day, I need to disregard you because at the end of the day, they will also be good. There will be enough that I need to disregard truth in order to. I think that's one way to read it. The other is that God casts truth earthward, meaning that right when God throws truth down, it's not like a dismissal. It is a saying truth will no longer be in heaven, just like lo bashamayim he, the Torah is not in heaven but on earth. That truth will no longer be this objective capital T truth coming from on high, but will spring forth from the ground. Truth is now going to be something that human beings need to toil to uncover or determine themselves.
They need to cultivate it.
Cultivate it, good, with the garden imagery, right? So it's interesting. I think it's one of two. Maybe it's dismissing truth in order to do what you believe. At the end of the day, sometimes you have to say, I understand that the truth is not on my side here, but I believe in something so strongly, I'm going to do it anyway, and maybe create my own truth, right? So maybe God is doing that. Or maybe God is saying, I am now banishing truth from the heavens, from being a capital T truth, and letting human beings determine what's going to be true. Maybe letting them decide if they're going to be worth the project of creation. Okay, let's move on to our next text. This is also this one is more cynical. The rabbis are sitting around the Beit Midrash and they call a vote because they've been debating something for so long, which is similar to our first text, which is would it have been better if people were never created in the first place? And they vote and the results come in, and let's read to see what happens. Who wants to read? Somebody in the room this time, maybe. Okay, thanks. Yes, that's right.
The sages taught the following Baraita.
Right. It's an authoritative text in rabbinic tradition.
For 2.5 years, Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel disagreed. These say it would have been preferable had humanity not been created.
That's probably Shammai.
Not been created. And those said it is preferable for humanity to have been created.
Probably Hillel.
Than had it not been created. Ultimately, they were counted and concluded it would have been preferable had humanity not been created than to have been created. However, now that it has been created, examine one's actions already committed and correct them. And some say one should scrutinize one's planned action, whether or not and in what manner those actions should be performed, so as not to sin in the first place.
Yeah, it's a little jumbled, but
so
go ahead.
One's talking about the past and one's talking about the future.
Right. So what I love about this is we immediately resolve one dispute and get started on another, but so they have the vote, the votes come in, it's better that humanity should not have been created, but now that they have, let them examine their ways. That's a nice little bit of teaching. Okay, you know what? Why are we talking so much about whether or not we should have? We have been created. So what's next? Let's examine ourselves. Let's do cheshbon nefesh. Let's try to do better.
It's like when you break something, instead of yelling at someone for having broken it, figure out what are you going to do with it.
Right, exactly right.
Can you repair it? Yeah.
Right. It's already right. Somebody's broken it. Let's not squabble over that it happened. It happened. Let's move forward. But then they debate about, is it yefashfesh b'ma'asav or yemashmesh b'ma'asav? What is it? Yefashfesh being they should scrutinize what they've already done and not do it again. And yemashmesh, they're saying is, think about what your actions will imply and then avoid sinning in the first place.
would be a very good midrash for schools, including public.
Yeah.
Any school.
For sure. Right.
You have what's given, let's work with what's given.
Right. Right. And I'm kind of now thinking it in context to the first one too, in terms of like ask for apologies but not permission kind of thing, where like God creates humanity anyway. And so, sort of, what will be versus, what, go ahead. Yeah.
No one blames God.
Say more.
And they didn't want it. God did it anyway. And there's nothing said about why did he do it. They just accepted it. And is that the way it's supposed to be? Are angels destined to only do what God says? Or do they have some element of the same free will that humans have?
Right. So going back to angels and whether or not they have free will. So with this text, right, it's just the rabbis, it's mortals having the debate. But in the first one, it was the angels saying that, should we create humanity in the first place? And now that humanity has been created, flash forward to rabbis sitting around the Beit Midrash, arguing whether or not it was the right thing. They're not blaming God, like you said. They're not blaming God for having created. They're really, I think, just reflecting on whether or not this project was worthwhile. And quick side about compost. If you're composting, which is wonderful, the brown plate and the food scraps go in compost. Everything else would go in trash. Good. So it's interesting. Again, this one is a bit more pessimistic, I think, a little bit of a downer that more people agreed that better that we weren't created, but it has a hopeful end but now that we have the power to do better, right? We have the power to make it worth it.
Problem solving.
Yes, problem solving.
Which is big.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But it also gets to what is truth, right? And again, we have Hillel and Shammai debating. And do you have truth by taking a vote, and whoever the majority wins? In democracy, that's how we determine policy or candidates, but it's not necessarily how we determine truth, right? Majority wins doesn't necessarily work with truth, but it may work with how we're going to act.
Right.
But what is truth? Okay, I have a couple more hands. I'm seeing Bob and Nelson.
Same two.
Yeah.
I got a cynical word in here. God created us, let us loose, and we've been wrecking the world ever since. So why isn't he at fault? I know it's free will, but I mean, how does free will really get him off the hook? It's like letting a bull loose in the china shop. You should have known what was going to happen next. Yeah,
no, I have my rabbi from home, Rabbi Artson, one of the deans of rabbinical of Ziegler. Yeah, we would have, he's a theologian, and we were, and I tended to jump to God's defense, and then he says, "What, you think God needs defending?" And then I feel, I guess you're right. I didn't need to do that.
That sounds like him.
Yeah. But he would say, look, if you're driving a car and the car is faulty, you blame the maker of the car, right? Unless, of course, you were doing something bad to take care of it. But that was his point, is you can make a case for blaming God when you look at the way people are, and you say, well, who created people? And so that it's still, I don't go that far. It's not in my wiring. I don't fault anybody who does, but no, that is a fair thing to say, right? That do you blame God for this? Do you blame our maker for the way that we are? Or do you say it's free will, but you're saying that's sort of, you're hiding behind it. You're saying that's kind of a cop-out. I don't know. I tend to think I'm probably in that camp. I'm quicker to blame ourselves, but I totally respect wherever you come at it. I see a few hands here, then we're gonna go to Bob. Let's start out here and we'll go forward. So Sheila.
But you could also say, yeah, God created us, but there were some defects. We were not perfectly created, and therefore we can't blame God for that. Mm-hmm. It's just like human beings. Nobody is the same. No two people are identical.
Right. We were created imperfect. Okay, good.
I think also And this gets back to what is truth, because it's hard sometimes to know. Maybe most of the time it's hard to know. But is it a glass half full or a glass half empty? I mean, Nelson's right that we've done a lot to mess things up, but we've also done a lot of ostensibly good things.
Right.
Yeah.
So what direction are we moving in? Hard to necessarily say.
Yeah.
But we keep moving
Right.
individually, in groups, larger groups, etc. And
Yeah.
some of that's good and some of that's not so good.
Right. But I want to, a point you're bringing up about perspective that I'm hearing, which is if I drew a big number 6 on the board and I said, what number is this? Everybody here would say 6.
Yeah, it can be 9.
Unless it's 9, right? If you're standing on this side, it's a 9, right? So sometimes there are literally multiple truths. It depends on where you're standing. Let's keep going down the line. So who is next? Okay, yeah.
You had separated voting for truth from voting
Yeah.
in a democracy where
Right.
taking action. But you can't separate them because the perception of truth is what creates the desire to do action. So the two are inexplicably intertwined.
Okay, so maybe truth and majority opinion, you're saying is intertwined.
They are in terms of action. In other words, if it's perceived that driving without a seatbelt is no good,
right?
That's the truth, and the action is to legislate that you have to have that.
Right.
So that legislation wouldn't have occurred if that truth had not been agreed upon.
Right. So sometimes we get at policy because most people think a certain way, and then it's safe to say that that is consensus truth because enough people arrived at it, if I'm understanding you correctly.
Correct, but it's universal. Abortion, okay, if you accept the fact that it's murder, if that's the truth, then you only have one option in terms of action.
Right.
So almost everything we do is based on a perception of a truth.
Oh, right. Everything we do being based on a perception of a truth.
That's Absolutely. A better thing.
Let's keep going down. Yep.
So
Yeah.
I have a different opinion from the majority. The developer.
Minority opinion.
So God created us perfectly, but He gave us the choice.
Right.
It's like a coin. So there are two faces to every coin. So it depends where you're coming from and how you look at it. For example, I'll give an example. So the majority in this country thinks that Israel is at fault for going to Gaza and killing everybody, okay? They are not doing it. That's the only army which tells ahead of time where they are going to bombard. Nobody in the world did something like this. Nobody cared, not America, not Britain, nobody cared. The Japanese, okay? And going back to Roman times and Greek times and Persian times, whatever. So it depends. And unfortunately, there is also Baal HaMe'ah, Baal HaDe'ah. He who is stronger is becoming the dictator and puts his will or places the other people.
Right.
So there is no free will. There is no free choice. Whoever talks better or hands out bribery to get elected or something like this, so he gets the majority, but
Right.
it's not the truth.
Right. Yeah.
So it depends how you look at things.
Correct. Absolutely. And there's something so interesting to me. There's a book by, I'm forgetting her first name, but Halberstam, something Halberstam. And she talks about how it used to be, about the justice system in ancient Israel. We arrived at where we arrived at. And she was saying it used to, in the Torah, it says, if a matter is too difficult for you, you bring it to God, right? But then when we get the temple, it's you bring it to the Kohanim and you know, they can consult the Urim and the Tumim. And basically you can have that system of deciphering absolute truth, right? But after the destruction of the temple, the rabbis had to come to terms with no longer having that direct pathway to truth. And instead, they had to settle for justice, which was, you know, we can't necessarily arrive at truth anymore, or at least capital T, divine or absolute truth, but we can devise a human justice system that at least gives us the best chance to arrive at a just solution to the problems that we face. But you had to part with truth, which goes back to our first text where God cast truth to the ground. In this case, if you think God was sending it earthward, then it's that our justice system is still maybe trying to, not disregarding truth, but trying to cultivate truth, but recognizing that it's no longer in heaven. It springs forth from the ground.
Aside from the liturgical part of it, I had to do a book jacket some years ago. It was a compilation of essays by a bunch of law professors. Mm-hmm. And the conclusion of this, when they went the establishment of law in the United States, they came to the conclusion, and this is how we've lived it ever since, is that we do not have a legal system of truth. What we have is a legal system of justice.
Justice. Yeah, there you go.
And justice is not always just.
Yeah, right.
That's your shirt.
Yes. There you go.
To do this book jacket, I had to think about it. I read every one of those essays that was in this book.
Wow. Amazing.
Discovering, or peeling back how these methods were derived by what came before, many of them referring back to the Bible.
Yeah.
And where it came from and what culture they may have.
Yes.
And it was a remarkable, very eye-opening thing.
Amazing. Amazing.
You don't think when you're doing a book jacket for a publisher that it's going to really impact your life in different ways.
That's amazing. Great experience.
The two editors of this were Goldstein and Goldstein, but not related.
Yeah.
Best example of free will comes right into Bereshit, because God created the world, he created man. And when he created man, he created Adam. And he only had one request, only one request, directly from God. Don't take the apple from that tree of knowledge. And that's all I ask. That's the one thing I ask.
Mm. Right. Seems simple enough. Simple enough. Bob, and we'll go back around. Bob.
So back to the beginning of this Midrash.
Yep.
We're talking about the world, whether there should be men or not, humans or not. At one point, there were no humans. And the world did just fine and did its own thing. And now we have humans, and humans impact the earth. But whether something is good or whether something is bad relates on how it affects humans. The definition of something being good, whether it's in art or music or in science or medicine, is how it impacts humans. Or if it sustains the earth, that sustains humans. It's all about us. So should there be an event that there would be no humans anymore, the earth would still exist in whatever form that it is. And whatever the environment would be, would go without human impact. So trees would grow or not based on trees. The temperature of the earth would be whatever its temperature is. The sea creatures, the strong would survive and the weak would come and go. But whether your behavior is good or bad is all really based on how it affects humans.
Yeah, so obviously an androcentric worldview that understands what is good or bad as in relation to the human experience. And I think that that's obvious that we've created a society that generally thinks along those lines of necessity. But I do think our Torah pushes us to expand our perception to not just be androcentric. We're not supposed to cut down the Baal Tashchit, not cutting down a tree. A tree is not a human being, in a wartime, that a tree is not a soldier that you should, an enemy soldier that you should cut it down. So I do think our Torah has plenty of love of nature and see beyond yourself. But certainly most of the Torah is how do you build a just society for human beings? But there's plenty of towards animals. Baal Tzarei Chaim. Did I say that right? Tzar Balei Chaim. Thank you. I'm jumbled from the week. Thank you. Tzar Balei Chaim, which is the rabbis derive it from the Torah. The Torah itself doesn't have that. That's a halachic term that the rabbis construct from verses in the Torah. But if you see a donkey struggling under the weight of its burden, you have to lighten the load. So there's certainly, I think I would argue, I would push back that our Torah is not satisfied with an androcentric worldview. But when you're coming up with a human justice system and I mean, certainly a moral code for human beings, that's going to be the emphasis. But no, I do think our tradition pushes us to see beyond just the human element. David, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's fair enough. But to Bob's point, I understand that those who are the keepers of geologic time, whichever particular academic departments or fields do that. We all thought we were still in the Holocene, but it turns out we're in the Androcene, which is the latest epoch, which maybe began earlier than we thought. So maybe we've always been living in it. But the whole point of that is that human beings have a theoretically outsized influence on the planet.
Right.
At the same time, as you were observing, there are all kinds of other things on the planet. Some of them maybe do better because of human intervention. Others struggle more. And we don't seem to have a very great ability to adjust behavior collectively around some of those issues, because we can't even agree sometimes on whether talk about truth, whether something's a good outcome or a bad outcome. Which leads me in a long-winded way back to the first Midrash, where I think another interesting thing is that you have two angels that say, yeah, create human beings. You have two angels that say, no, don't. Only one of those two, not peace, truth, gets cast to the ground or earthward or however we want to understand that.
Right.
And I think that's also interesting.
But okay, good. So Rabbi Alex has taught this text in the past, and she added something that I took out and I added something else. You're wanting what she had in, because of course, she's right always. But it's Menachem Mendel of Coates who says that you don't need to cast both to the ground, because once you get rid of truth, there is peace. Because what is most war is fighting over different
what we think is true,
right? Yeah. So if you've already removed truth from the scenario, you have peace. Right? When you're no longer fighting over the truth. But
maybe
I want to get to let's go one more comment and then we'll get to the last
quick observation. I mean, I think the Christians got it all wrong. They say the fallen angel was Satan.
Right.
The fallen angel was truth.
Right. It's losing a good one, not a bad one.
He didn't fall, he was pushed.
Okay, let's do this last text.
Are these two texts right next to each other? I see they're on the same
They
page.
are. I think I inverted them. I think this one comes earlier. But yeah, they are both. Again, we're still in Eruvin. Who would like to read our last text for today? Please, Sherry, go ahead.
Rabbi Abba Muel said, for 3 years, Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel disagreed. These said the halakha is in accordance with our opinion, and these said the halakha is in accordance with our opinion. Ultimately, a divine voice emerged and proclaimed, both these and those are the words of the living God. However, the halakha is in accordance with the opinion of Beit Hillel.
Okay, so pause for just a moment, because that's a very, very, you may have heard it. Elu ve'elu divrei Elohim chaim. These and these are the words of the living God, which is really radical. Because how could that be? Especially if you believe in a capital T truth. One must be right. And a divine voice comes down and says, actually, you are both right. Both of what you say comes from me, right? Both positions
We have
are.
an example of that in the Ten Commandments, at least one.
Shomor v'zachor? Yes, right. So hearing different things, but at the root being the same, right? So both are the words of the living God. However, it doesn't end there, right? But halakha goes according to Beit Hillel. And it's interesting because the rabbis believe that Hillel gets this world, but Shammai gets the world to come, which brings us back to angels. And one of the reasons was that Shammai was always stricter, right? He's the one who's saying, better if humans weren't created. He sort of had this unattainable standard for halakha, and Hillel was always the more, like empathetic or the more understanding of human nature.
The Orthodox and the conservative.
Sure, right. Like, but potentially, so stricter halakha versus what are the people actually going to be able to do, because you want people to practice halakha, I think is to your point there. So that is a way that the rabbis say that they both actually are correct and get their time. Hillel gets this world, Shammai gets the world to come.
But there's another way to look at that also, which is that even in this world, in theory, one of the reasons why the minority opinion is always still there is someday it may be the majority opinion.
Good. That's a perfect segue to where we're going. But go ahead, Ron.
I was going to say that, we haven't read the last part, but I was going to say that in comparing Hillel with Shammai and going back to the first Mishnah, Hillel did his halakha with kindness.
Yeah.
And Shammai did not.
Good. That is literally what's happening next. So let's read. You want to read, Rob?
No.
Sherry, you want to keep reading?
But there's also a question when you have which color is better?
Yeah.
They're really equal.
Right.
For this one's better, and for that one, that's one.
Some things are just subjective or aesthetic.
Right. Even Hillel and Shammai in their disagreement on the direction of the lights. Come on, is this what we spend our time on?
Right. For them,
except for the message.
Right. That's true. But for them, I do think it really was a concern for halakha, right? Which is the way. Right? It's not halachot, although we do say halachot, but it's not it is, what is halakha? What is the way? We need a way. But I think that gets back to our truth versus justice thing, which is yes, we're parting with trying to get at the objective truth, recognizing that as human beings, we may not get the truth, but we do need an answer to what are we supposed to do? What is the way forward? So even if there are multiple ways, ultimately, sometimes we need to choose a way. I think that's where Shammai and Hillel butt heads all the time, because they're still wanting to get at halakha. What are we supposed to do? And that's why the bat kol here, the voice of God, is saying, look, they're both the words of the living God, but you have to go with one to move forward. And God is saying, in this case, it's Beit Hillel. But let's finish. Sherry, you want to keep reading? The Gemara asks.
The Gemara asks, since both these and those are the words of the living God, why were Beit Hillel privileged to have the halakha established in accordance with their opinion? The reason is that they were agreeable and forbearing, showing restraint when affronted, and when they taught the halakha, they would teach both their own statements and the statements of Beit Shammai. Moreover, when they formulated their teachings and cited a dispute, they prioritized the statements of Beit Shammai to their own statements in deference to Beit Shammai.
So that's what Ron was saying about being respectful, but there's also something practical here, which is that if you go by Hillel, you're also getting Shammai, because Hillel quotes Shammai. So you get both.
You're learning it, but you're not following it.
Yeah, maybe you're not following, but you're learning it, right? And so, but ultimately, and this is what struck me about what Naftali Bennett said, that he, in this cabinet, he had people who felt differently, but he wanted that and respected that and learned to love that. And I think that is so rare and only getting more rare, and especially in polarizing times. How do we have our debates with respect and the ability to actually inhabit the other perspective so that you can understand and quote it, even as you make your own? And I want to end with one more verse that was missing from here, and then I'm going to get Rod, which is from Tosefta, which is stuff that didn't make the Mishnah, but we preserve everything, right? The Tosefta is a very rich body of text. And it says, create for yourself a heart of many rooms to hold both the teachings of Hillel and Shammai. And I think about that all the time, and especially now. How do we create it is so hard to do, but we can. And that, I think, is what makes humanity worth creating and so impressive. That at the end of the day, our greatest virtue is having this heart that can contain both, that has the capacity to build within it many rooms. Biology only confirms that. We have 4 chambers, right? It's rooms. Our heart is possessed of many rooms. And so I want to push back whenever we feel like we only have room for one opinion. And I want to say that I understand that there are times that we genuinely feel that way, and that's okay. But how can we push ourselves as Jews and as our commitment to Judaism to create for ourselves a heart of many rooms to hold it all? Because we can. And that's why we're first mode. That's why we're very good.
We'd be very boring if everybody
we'd be angels. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I probably have the wrong text, but isn't the Shulchan Aruch that only quotes the halacha, doesn't say where it came from, and doesn't give multiple opinions? So shouldn't we just throw that out? We shouldn't use it?
I think more Mishnah Torah, which is Maimonides' legal code. He doesn't give you hyperlinks. He doesn't give you sources. He doesn't give you where it came from, because he sort of had, he was a master and one of our most brilliant thinkers, but he knew that. so he was, yeah, but not very right. He was giving you Mishnah Torah, not the Mishnah in the sense of like second or repeated, to the point where all you need is Torah and this, and you're good. Right? Like, I'm giving you the answers. Shulchan Aruch, on the other hand, I do think it's a bit better at Yosef Karo, and you get the Mapa, which is the Ashkenazic block.
I might have the wrong text.
Yeah, I think it's the Mishnah. You're correct, but I think it's the Mishnah Torah. Yes.
Midrash, where the people who are disagreeing tell God, get out of here.
That was our first one that we did together.
That's
and you're right to bring it up, because it also had the Bat Kol, the voice of God entering the room. And they said, right? Truth is not in heaven. You cast truth to the ground is another way to say it. So it's great to tie those together. Our first one and our 12th session together. Yeah.
Maybe that's what Hillel's doing when they say, but we're going to teach Shammai also.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
We were talking about Sheila brought it up about whether man was made perfect. The answer is, we don't perceive him as being perfect, but to God, we were made perfect, because what he wanted us to do was to improve ourselves by doing the mitzvot.
Right. I like that.
That was last week.
Yeah, that's right.
Hey, Rob, you could be a rabbi. I like write sermons.
I like the perfectly imperfect. Maybe we were created perfectly imperfect.
A family story was told about my grandfather, who was respected as a very observant Jew, and people would come running up to him. Oh, I saw so-and-so smoking on Shabbat. And my grandfather's response was, why are you telling me? I'm not God's manager.
Well, thank you as always. I always look forward to this as a highlight of the week for me, and great to see everybody. Yeah. That's funny. Great to see you all. An early Shabbat Shalom, and continue to take time for yourself to breathe. It's been a long week and a lot to process, but there's some good, hopeful things, I hope. So great to see you all. Shabbat Shalom.